Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. So today we are on week 2, episode 3 of Cloak and Dagger, and there's a lot of stuff going on, so we're gonna just dive right into it. If you're new to this channel, make sure that you go ahead and click the subscribe button, and also go ahead and click the bell for notifications every time we do a new video.
So, week 2, episode 3 of Cloak and Dagger. This episode has a lot going on, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of people, you probably might have to watch it twice just to really get an idea of everything that was happening, or have somebody next to you that you can have dialogue with during commercials, which is what we did when we watched the show.
I was the confused one, he was the dialogue.
So we're going to attack this episode from 3 different standpoints, and that standpoint, what we're going to start with first, is Tandy. So we get basically starting back off where we left off in episode 2, where Tandy basically crashes her car after seeing Tyrone just magically appear in the middle of the street. Tandy's basically, you know, has a concussion, probably a little woozy and things like that. But because she's so freaked out by seeing Tyrone just show up out of nowhere, she's still in her, in her flight mode. Like we talked about in the last episode, Tandy has this tendency to just run away from her problems when things don't seem to be going her way. And she does the exact same thing in this situation. She runs back home and has this whole altercation with her mom, basically based off of the way she left things in the last episode. Mm-hmm. But as Tandy basically is still going on the run after almost running into a detective that we're going to talk about later in this episode, she falls asleep on the bus and she immediately starts having visions of Tyrone. And the visions kind of progress. It first starts out with, her seeing Tyrone as a kid and his interaction with his older brother Billy. The interesting thing, like we talked about in the previous episode about Tandy's power, is that Tandy has the ability to see basically like a person's happiest thought or happiest, like whatever would make them the happiest. Mm-hmm. And so for Tyrone, it is this idea of his brother, instead of going to get the radio from the car, it's his brother spending time with him, his brother being the person that invests in him. But it quickly goes into a darker form of happiness, I would say, which is Tyrone's, what he's currently struggling with, which is Tyrone wanting to get revenge on the person that killed his brother. And so we see Tyrone go through some very dark and very, I would probably even say twisted and vulgar like forms of way that he feels like he could go about getting this revenge. Mm-hmm. But the really interesting thing that I like about the show, that the show does in this, is that it doesn't just highlight like, yeah, this is things that Tyrone could do and this would make him happy. It goes through the progression that Tyrone knows, like, yes, he could do these things and it would bring him some sort of relief, but there are consequences to his actions. The consequences evolve, like his parents basically, like his parents could die or they could be targeted as a result of him seeking revenge. Mm-hmm. He could be targeted by the police and that could lead to him dying. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing that I like about this show that this episode does is that it's not just Tandy witnessing Tyrone making these decisions, but Tandy becomes very emotionally involved in these decisions, and it comes to a point where she eventually is just like, you have to find another way. And she's yelling at Tyrone, and as she's able to give him one of her daggers, her dagger turns into handcuffs. And it's her way of saying, like, look, you can get the revenge you want, but you can't do it in a way that's going to lead to somebody dying. Mm-hmm. Which is really, really cool. And it just leads to this continued dive into these characters. And honestly, it was really, I like how I was able to dive into these characters, but not from the character's perspective. Like, we got to dive into Tyrone's character, but not from Tyrone's perspective. We got it from Tandy's perspective. Tandy seeing, his thoughts and his emotional state. And I thought that was really cool. And it definitely really keeps you locked into the episode. So while that's Tandy's perspective on the whole situation, we on the other side, we have Tyrone. Mm-hmm. And Tyrone is going through similar things, and the episode kind of starts off from the exact same point that it does with Tandy, but it just from Tyrone.
I thought there was something completely wrong. Anybody else was confused when that happened?
I mean, it did get me like a little twisted. Like, are we having broadcasting?
I thought we were having problems with our internet.
Right. But instead, we're seeing everything unfold from Tyrone's perspective, which I really like, because these are two different characters who have two different personalities and two different journeys. So it's great to see how they are each dealing with it. And Tyrone is in a situation where he's much more lost and he's much more confused, one, about his abilities, but also just about his emotional state. You know, we talked about in the previous episode, like Tyrone is dealing with this idea of, yes, he's very sad that his brother has died, but he's also very upset. He's very angry. He's very stressed out and just overwhelmed.
Right.
You know, as a teenager. So we see him basically reach out to basically one of his classmates, who is a female who's definitely very interested in Tyrone.
To say the least.
Yeah, I guess that's just putting it nicely. But he reaches out to her and she provides a solution, which is, you know what, maybe you should try voodoo as an alternative, which is a really weird suggestion to somebody that you're trying to like date potentially.
Well, they are in New Orleans. So.
I know, but like, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, we don't live in New Orleans, so I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's a cool pickup line though. Like, hey, I like you. Let's go do something. It's probably just like a normal thing there. But so we see Tyrone basically go this route and trying to understand, once again, not just his powers, but also where he's at mentally and spiritually and everything like that. And once again, I like this as well. Once again, it's unconventional. It's an unconventional way of a quote-unquote hero in the making discovering who he is. You know, it wasn't just him sitting down with another hero or him doing something heroic to figure out what he is or anything like that. No, it's a deep dive into his personal traits and his personal mindset. So we see Tyrone get some advice on a voodoo ritual that he can do, that basically once he does this ritual, he immediately goes, so it's the flip side of him interacting with Tandy from a young age, also who we see her practicing ballet on the Roxanne Court building. And Tyrone saves her from almost stepping in a puddle that's like electrified. But from that standpoint, we continue to see Tandy's fear, which is what Tyrone's abilities allow him to do. It allows him to project your greatest fear. And we're able to see how she's constantly afraid of different things. She's afraid of, you know, she still hasn't really faced the fear and the sadness that came along with her father passing. She doesn't really face the fear and the struggle that comes along with her mom's addiction and her mom's, you know, just, you know, I don't know, I guess loose cannon type behavior. And she constantly is running away. But as we see when she runs away, she always falls in like this quicksand, which is really symbolic to the simple fact of being able to highlight, look, as much as Tandy likes to run away from her problems, it only usually leads her into a deeper, darker hole than she originally started in. And Tyrone is able to basically do the exact same thing that Tandy did for him, which is reach out to her and say, you have to find another way. You can't continue to run from this. There is a way for you to get the answer and the help that you want. So once again, really cool. The exact same thing that we get to see from Tyrone. We get to learn a little bit more about Tandy, but not have to actually be in Tandy's shoes. We get to be in Tyrone's shoes as he sees this from Tandy. Another thing that I completely glossed over is that they both have another vision, each of them, of when they're as kids again, but in like their modern day surroundings. And those scenes are very symbolic. It's not really spelled out, but we see Tyrone sitting in a room where he's locked in a room, and there's a bunch of checks that like are written out to him from his brother, and there's posters on the wall that talk about, you know, these are rewards that you deserve and this, that, and the other. And this is just my interpretation. I don't know, maybe you guys could let me know what you guys are thinking, but it kind of spoke to me in a way of saying like, look, this is the life that Tyrone currently has, where Tyrone has inherited a lot. And there's a lot of pressure on him to live up to the rewards that he's received. But as you see in the scene, like it's a young Tyrone locked in this room, but he's crying. He's not happy about all these things that he's given, like all the blank checks, which I would assume are like the tuition for him to go to this great school. Like as great as that is, it comes with a lot of weight and it comes with a lot of pressure. And it's clear from seeing the way his younger self is reacting that he's not reacting to that pressure well, that it's actually causing him to break down more than it is causing him to succeed. With Tandy, we're able to see her as a child, and she's handing out...
That was so creepy.
It was very creepy. Her handing out like medicine or drugs or something, and she's handing it to these different people. And you can tell from two of the people that are in the line, one was the guy that she robbed in the first episode and second episode that she encountered, and the guy that was kind of like in love with her. She hands them both pills, and like the minute these people take these pills, they die. And once again, just my interpretation, I interpreted it as, you know, that's Tandy's a visualization of how Tandy uses people. She uses them and gets what she wants out of them, and then basically leaves them for dead from that standpoint, because she's already gotten what she needed to be able to move on. What do you think? Am I reaching, or did you think that was...
Look, you know that I didn't even know what that was about, so I'm going with your interpretation. Well, I guess the Tyrone thing confused me more than the Tandy thing. The Tandy thing was a little more obvious. Like, yeah, she's handing out drugs, so obviously she's poisoned, so that was kind of more obvious. The Tyrone thing wasn't as obvious, so I liked your perspective. But I mean, I was sitting there confused, so if anybody was like me,
please leave a comment and let me know, what you guys thought of those, of like just these, I mean, not just that one, but all of them that they kind of went through. What do you think that they were kind of trying to speak to? But the last thing that was kind of low-key in this episode, but is actually very, very important to, that I think is going to be very important to the show, but also to the characters, Cloak and Dagger, is the introduction. We kind of saw her a little bit in the last episode of Detective O'Reilly. Just a really quick explanation. Detective O'Reilly was in the original Cloak and Dagger comics, and she's the first detective that Cloak and Dagger kind of run into when they start being vigilantes and the police start getting involved. And Detective O'Reilly is essentially, in a world where there's not a lot of good cops, is a very good cop. She's always looking to protect the people, to serve the people, and everything like that. And in the comics, she has a lot of, her and Cloak tend to butt heads a lot because Cloak's powers are so much darker in the comics. And so she's constantly trying to protect Tandy in the comics. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of unfolds in the series, because as we've already been able to see in this episode particularly, Detective O'Reilly is trying to protect Tandy. While she's pursuing a case where there's an assault case, she's already able to deduce and see from the evidence that Tandy is the victim more so than the culprit.
Right.
But it is going to be interesting to see how Detective O'Reilly interacts with, because we also get to kind of see the return of the bad cop that Tyrone has been dealing with. And essentially, there's been some underhandedness where he's somehow closed the case by saying, oh, this was just a simple assault, and, you know, it was just, you know, a drug deal gone bad or something like that. And he kind of just sweeps it under the rug. But it's clear from Detective O'Reilly's face and just her reaction and her pursuit of Tandy, like still kind of pursuing Tandy, and Tandy reaching out to her, that this is not like an open and shut case.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if probably by the end of the season, we probably see her helping Tandy and Tyrone, even probably helping Tyrone bring this dirty cop to justice. So maybe that's something we can potentially end up seeing. But, you know, that was pretty much episode 3 in a nutshell. I'm still very much intrigued in this show. I love how Freeform is taking a completely different spin on, you know, these comic book type of shows and these types of heroes. And within the first 3 episodes, we're just getting a lot of origin. And that's great. We're not getting too much superpowers. We're getting a lot of just in-depth about who these characters are. And there's no big bad villain or anything like that. So yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait for the next episode to come out. We're finally going to see that whole Cloak and Dagger conversation of trying to understand,
finally,
who they are to each other. So stay tuned for us next week. We'll be back with a brand new review. Like we said before, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave your questions below. Leave your comments below. We will respond back.
Yes,
and that's going to be pretty much it for us tonight, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.